All right, very good. So first, just so everybody, because sometimes there's always some folks who haven't been here before, I'll just review the technical overview. For folks who are on Zoom, please stay muted unless you're going to be speaking, and sign on to our call, Zoom call tonight with your phone or your computer, but not both if possible. The democratic rules of order are how we run our meetings, and if someone would post the link there, that would be very nice. If you want to speak into the meeting, it's best by far to use, if you're on Zoom, to have the computer raise your hand for you, because what that does is it puts you right up on top so that I can see who has their hand up first. It keeps track of who raised their hand first. And then the folks here at the Land Trust, just do your typical raise your hand, and I'll go back and forth between the folks on Zoom and the folks in here in person answering questions. And then on Zoom, when you're done, when you remember to put your hand down again after you've had the chance to ask your question. And if anyone's calling in on the phone, you'll need to unmute yourself by using *6, and then just speak up so that we know that you'd like to say something or ask a question, because you don't have a way to raise your hand. Okay. I don't track what's going on in the chat. So if you ask a question in the chat, I won't see it. You'll need to participate in the meeting, speak up, and ask your question, just like everybody else. And those of us, just wait, could you wait just a second? Okay, so then for the people who are here in the audience, you need to, as you see, I'm speaking into the microphone very close. The way this works with these microphones and with Zoom is you really have to do it close, because Zoom automatically cuts out other noise. So if you get too far, it thinks it's background noise, and they can't hear us. So we want to remember, you have to make sure the light's on, and when you speak into the mic, speak into it closely, and don't just speak to the room, because no one there can hear you if you don't speak into the mic. Okay, all of our board members are here tonight. We have John Affolter is here. He's our treasurer. I'm Diane Emerson, the president.
I'm Ben Carr. Nice to meet you.
Ben is co-hosting the meeting tonight. And on Zoom, we have board members. Jessica Anakar is with us this evening. She's our corresponding secretary. And Deborah Gusson is here. She's our vice president. And is anyone else? Oh, Jamila, there she is. She's with us. Wonderful. And Rick Shrum is here. So we have a full complement of board members here tonight. Fabulous. So the first thing we want to do is one of the things I want to remind everybody when we have our meetings. The council prides itself on striving to conduct its business in a professional, respectful, and courteous. Islanders and guests are expected. Rudeness, personal criticism, and ridicule, including the chat contributions in online meetings, are not acceptable, nor will they be tolerated. So please keep that in mind. This is not Facebook. We are here in person, and these meetings are being recorded. So please be courteous. Next, we have the land acknowledgement, and board member Rick Shrum will be reading the land acknowledgement.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. We acknowledge and honor the tribes of Washington State as political entities. We commit to respecting the laws of treaties and sovereignty under the United States Constitution, Article 6. We commit to taking actions of reconciliation, working with the tribes to identify ways to steward the land, restore habitats, and fostering practices that will benefit future generations.
Thank you very much, Rick. Now we have the next thing on the agenda is approving the minutes from the last meeting. All of you who are on our mailing list were sent the draft minutes of the December meeting. So I'm calling out to see if anyone has any corrections to those minutes. Not hearing any corrections, I mark those as approved. And now we have introduction of guests. This evening we have John Taylor, Director of King County Department of Local Services. We have Puget Sound Energy, and I was wondering if the Puget Sound Energy folks could just pass the mic around and introduce yourselves.
Good evening. My name is Linda Olson, and I'm a real estate representative for Puget Sound Energy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Cook. I'm a real estate representative also with Puget Sound Energy.
And I'm Sean Greniger with Puget Sound Energy's real estate department.
Yes. Okay, and we also have some folks on Zoom from Puget Sound Energy. We have Lindsay Gilreath. I might have not pronounced your name correctly. Lindsay, could you let us know your role in the PSE?
Yeah, it's Lindsay Gilreath, like the wreath on a door. I am the regional arborist and project manager for Puget Sound Energy's vegetation management department for Kitsap County as well as Vashon Island.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lindsay. And Heather, would you introduce yourself, please?
Of course, yes. My name is Heather Woldman, and I am a project manager with Puget Sound Energy.
And Karen Brubeck, please.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here tonight. Karen Brubeck, and I'm a Senior Community Affairs Manager for PSE. Thanks.
Wonderful. I think that's everybody now. And if are there any other guests that I'm missing who are with us this evening that are not Islanders, and anyone from King County, etc.? Okay, very good. So the next item on the agenda, so we have some community happenings. The Island Celebration 1448, there's at the O Space. There will be a performance of 14 plays in 48 hours. It's the world's quickest theater festival, January 19th and 20th. It sounds like a lot of fun. I haven't been to it, but I'll bet you a bunch of you folks have. So that's going to be pretty amazing. And MLK Day was this week, and I'd like to share with you Martin Luther King's 6 principles for nonviolent direct action. Nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. Nonviolence seeks to win friendships and understanding. Nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice or evil, not people. Nonviolence holds that unearned, voluntary suffering for a just cause can educate and transform people and societies. Nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. And nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice. So our first speakers this evening is Puget Sound Energy. They're going to discuss tree wire, vegetation management, and easements. So I guess you folks have decided who's going to go up next and who's going to speak, right? You know what you're going to do. And we're going to hold our questions till they're done. So please keep in mind the questions you have so that we stay within the bounds and everybody of time that we have this evening.
Thank you, Diane.
You can come on up here when it's time for you guys to speak, come on up here so that the camera can see you easily. And then just sit here and talk and we'll work it that way. Who's first up? Who's up first?
I
Heather.
am. If I share my screen, will everyone be able to see?
Possibly, if you cannot have the option to share your screen. If not, I'll make you a co-host.
Okay, it says disabled share.
Then I shall make you a co-host.
Thank you. Looks like something changed. All right. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you so much for giving us a chance to speak today on tree wire easements and vegetation management. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I do love taking trips to Vashon, that's for sure. But I'll get started with the tree wire portion first here. As I said earlier, my name's Heather Waldman, project manager here at PSE. Quickly wanted to say I get assigned projects from our planning department. And our planning department is made up of a bunch of very smart people who are analyzing data regarding outages in our system and how it's performing as a whole. And if we're not meeting metrics or standards that we need to be, or they see any sort of issues, they will create projects to solve those problems. So just letting you all know, that's kind of how our projects are created a lot of times. And in the end, that results in more reliable power. So after I get assigned a project, then a whole team of experts also gets assigned a project. Some of those are in the room there today. That's usually by region, and examples would be real estate agents, vegetation management personnel, environmental permitting experts, an engineer and a lead engineer to help review, a construction manager, etc. So that's kind of how we operate. We kind of have different experts in different categories, and then we all work together to make the project a success. So with that, I'll go to the next slide. These are just some quick high-level facts about PSE. Puget Sound Energy is Washington's largest and oldest utility, serving 1.5 million customers in 10 counties. Our 3,100 plus employees live and work in the communities we serve, and that includes all of us here today on the call. We share our customers' concern for the environment, balanced with their expectations for uncompromised reliability, affordability, and safety. Because, like I said, we live here too. With that, also, there's more information on our website. Just wanted to mention this quick. So if you are looking for storm information, project maps, or system improvement projects, there is a link right here. And then also glossary of terms. Tree wire is in there. There's other terms as well. So if you're kind of confused about what something means, that's a good spot to check. And then there's some really good easement information on here. And actually, I'm going to go back to the first link. For the project maps, not all of our projects get put on there. Usually it's the larger ones, and typically it's closer to construction. Sometimes they do get put on there before easement acquisition and environmental permitting, though. It just kind of depends. All right, so we got 2 slides here about what tree wire is and the benefits of tree wire. So tree wire is a specially coated overhead wire that's designed to prevent an electric short, or in other words, an outage, when a tree limb falls into a power line. Where installed, it significantly reduces the frequency of tree-related outages, but obviously it can't prevent all disruptions, if a whole tree falls in the power line or something like that happens. On the left, this is kind of a quick little photo of it. So we have our conductor. That's what actually carries the electricity. So whatever that's made out of. We do a lot of ACSR, aluminum coated, steel reinforced. And then the coating, the tree wire, is polyethylene. So it's literally coated wire is what tree wire is. And benefits. Okay, so it reduces momentary and sustained outages due to limbs and trees by up to 70%. Can you all hear me in there? I'm just making sure. We're still good? Okay. And actually, I've heard that it does way better than that, but that's what we put on all our marketing sheets and everything, is that it's up to 70%. So it does a great job. The installation procedure is also similar to bare wire, so we don't need any special equipment or anything. Our construction crews know how to install it. That's a plus. And then another very big plus is the cost is comparable to bare wire. So tree wire is only about 10% more cost than bare wire. And I am gonna compare that to undergrounding for a quick second. So undergrounding, putting the wire underground as opposed to on poles overhead is 3 to 5 times more expensive. I know it's a big number or a big range, but with undergrounding, there's a lot of unknowns. You don't know what kind of subsurface you're dealing with in soil, and there can be cobbles. It can be hard to get the wire in. Trenching, it takes forever. If you're open trenching, you need special equipment. So you're talking a lot more cost for the equipment, and then you need a lot of additional crews. So I'm just giving you a quick picture of the difference there. And that, again, if you're looking at 10% increase to make your project very reliable as opposed to 300 to 500%, it's a big difference. And the last thing I want to mention about cost is, ever since I started here, PSE, we don't gold plate our designs. We're not going to just like put wires underground everywhere, because that does, in turn go back to our customers, of course. So we are trying to do what makes the most sense, if that makes sense. And we do have a lot of people who sign off for undergrounding as well. But we underground all the time. You'll see that in some slides later. But tree wire, the point is, tree wire is a very cost-effective solution, and it does a really good job for the slight cost increase. All right, my last 2 bullets are avian, beneficial for bird safety. A lot of you probably know, if birds spread their wings, they can be shocked and fatally injured or even killed. And we do have to abide by like the National Bald Eagle Treaty Act. And there's a lot. I actually honestly don't know them all. We have avian experts in our company, and so they do a quick check of all the projects. They, if there's a nest, they go out and monitor all that good stuff. But I want to mention this because I've had questions about this from a lot of landowners, where they'll say, well, I don't have trees on my property. Why do we need tree wire here? And I have whole projects actually in Skagit County where we're putting in tree wire to protect birds. So I just want to bring that to everyone's attention, that tree wire, I know it's called tree wire, but it actually has more benefits than just for, tree branches falling on the line. And my last one is that it mitigates wildfire risk, which is wonderful. The covered conductor, like you saw in that other picture, reduces the chance for a line to spark. So again, just it's a really great product, and it does a lot of really great things, and that's why we're putting in a lot of places.
Heather,
Yes.
I don't know how many more slides you have, but we're have to really move very, very quickly through the
Okay.
slides, because we have so many people that need to talk, and
Sure.
and we really need to have plenty of time for questions.
Okay, no problem. These 2 are past Vashon projects. I was going to list every road. I won't. I'll save some time there. Basically, we've been working the past, I don't even, 15 years. Honestly, I didn't have any of these projects personally. I talked to the planner who's worked in this area for 15 years though, to get some of these. But yeah, we've been putting in tree wire a lot of places. Here's a couple examples. Vashon Highway. Yeah, I said I won't list the rows, so I won't, but you guys can see them all. There's a bunch here. I will also mention that the entire island is an automation scheme. So not to get into the weeds, but basically we have automatic reclosers that are sensing faults, and within 5 minutes, them working together automatically, they'll isolate the problem on the island and keep as many people with power and isolate to just the issue, just the area where there's a problem. And that, like, for example, that's not the case on Bainbridge right now. So that's a huge plus for Vashon-Maury Island. I just wanted to throw out there. And my last slide before turning it over is the projects that we have coming up. So these are the ones that I am the project manager for right now, and working with the team that's on the call. So we have 115th Avenue. So that's about 1.6 mile tree wire job. These are all tree wire, I should say. And then we have Tramp Harbor. This one's on 87th Avenue and Tramp Harbor Road Southwest. These are both happening this year. Construction is starting this year. The ones on the right side, these will be starting in 2025. We have 99th Avenue, Dockton. Dockton's actually half underground, half overhead, and then 75th Avenue from Dockton to the historic cemetery down here. And then lastly, just this is a small 10 span job to the Cal Portland plant over here. So yeah, we're very dedicated to making the island more reliable. And with that, we'll turn it over to real estate. I believe Sean Greniger will go first, and then Lindsay will talk about vegetation management. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right. I don't want to take up too much time. There's a lot of things to cover. And a lot of things are covered in the pamphlet on the back table about easements. This is also found on our company's website at pse.com under easements. And it would be under easements for system type projects. Yep. So let's see, my title is Supervisor of Real Estate. And you already heard from a couple of people in my group, Linda and Michelle. They work under me, as well as a bunch of contractors that we have from HDR, Labonde Land, CLS, and some other private contractors. All of these individuals, they work on also, besides PSE projects, they work on like big WashDOT projects, sound transit projects, King County wastewater. They're all a bunch of real estate professionals, and so are we. You know, we have to take a lot of training. We all belong to an association, a professional organization, International Right-of-Way Association. And so we take classes and stuff like that. And some of us have attained a senior right-of-way status. And some of us, like myself, has that designation, as well as some of my coworkers and several other contractors we work with. And so on my staff, Michelle and Linda, they primarily have been working on Vashon projects with me. They are like, they both have you know, years of experience. They came to us from Pierce County Roads, and they also have like a real estate background, licenses, and appraisal licenses. So we have a bunch of people with title experience too. So those are the type of people that work in real estate at PSE. So when we talk about projects like we're talking about here, tree wire projects, one of the problems that we have is we can't always cite a new project in a county road. It's just not large enough because we have to meet what is called county clear zone requirements. And those clear zone requirements are calculated by our engineers and our surveyors. And on certain circumstances, you know, we try to keep everything in the roadway, but in certain circumstances, we have to go get easements because our facilities won't fit. You know, either we have, you know, our standard template easement that we use all the time that's been approved by our legal department. And that is, we could modify it for things like a frontage easement, you know, that includes power poles. So we could have a wire overhang easement if only we're going to hang wire over a piece of a property or someone cut the corner or something like that. We also could modify it to just be for anchors or just for a pole. So we all craft those and send those out to property owners in a written format because to meet the statutes of fraud, which is a legal term that everything in real estate has to be in writing, we have to send out a written offer to property owners. And so they'll receive that in the mail. Sometimes they'll receive our flyers prior to sending that out. And so we have them look over the offer, and if they have any questions, we ask them just to call us. You know, Michelle and Linda, they're great. You know, they have years of experience at Pierce County, and they've worked for me for several years. And so we are really great one-on-one with people. And if we can't answer your question, then we go to people like Lindsay and to Heather, you know, our engineers too. We have project teams every 2 weeks on our projects. And if we can't get the answer for you, or if there's a problem with citing something on your property, we could work with you. We could also work with you with vegetation issues. Lindsay is really great at meeting property owners, and so are we. We're more than willing to help and work with you guys on any type of easements that we need. The reason we need easements is we can't meet the engineering standards to fit in the county road because of the clear zone requirements. And those sort of came down from WashDOT to counties have adopted them and jurisdictions, the clear zone requirements. And that's why in some instances we have to, you know, go out on private property. It's not preferred, but occasionally that happens. So basically, and all this stuff comes down to us from our planning department. And so once we get that, we have a design with easement needs, and we send out offers. We research property deeds, information, and title stuff. And we first of all see if we have an existing easement that we could use. If we don't, then we go about acquiring one. And we're very helpful. We don't bite. We're pretty nice people. In fact, I consider myself a South Sound kid. I grew up just across the water in SeaTac, Des Moines area. And so, I'm a local kid. I've lived here in the South Sound for decades.
Thank you, Sean. We have more people. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it for real estate. The next person that's going to speak to us is Lindsay.
Okay.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Lindsay. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the regional arborist or project manager for Puget Sound Energy's vegetation management department. I am a certified arborist. I live in Paulsbo. I'm based out of Bremerton. Most of our department are certified arborists. I'd really like to start out by saying our main goal is safety. This department truly is a safety program. Preventing or reducing tree-related outages is more of a side effect, and it's a more easily tracked metric for our performance. Power lines, likely the power lines in front of your house, are pushing 12,000 volts. Depending on the size of the wire, it can be more. So for reference, the electricity running to your home is between 120 to 240 volts. So we're working around high voltages. We have a legal obligation to provide safe and reliable service. So we're responsible for trimming or removing incompatible species or hazard trees near the power lines in order to comply with local and state laws for the safety of the public, as well as our tree crews, the troublemen, as well as our Bertelco foremen, in order to increase service reliability. This includes maintaining at least minimum safe clearances that even our contractor, which is Aspen Tree Experts, whose crews have undergone specific training, cannot violate. Depending on the size of the lines, 10 feet plus of clearance is required for any tree worker that has not undergone this special training or that it's not equipped with the special tools to work inside of that space safely. So it really is critical to keep the public as well as our team safe out here in order to not only improve service, but yeah, just keep everybody safe. With that being said, me and my colleagues love trees. I grew up hiking in the mountains. I'm from Mount Shasta, California. I moved up here to Washington 3 years ago, and I don't like removing trees if possible. We want to maintain and retain happy, healthy, appropriate trees around and around the wires. So compatible trees are trees that do not exceed at a height over 25 feet at maturity. And when I say compatible, I'm really just saying compatible with the power lines. So thundercloud plums are frequently listed as compatible species, but they are really not. They can reach at maturity about 30 feet in height, which puts it into the wire zone. So we end up trimming that. The response to trimming is for it to grow taller and faster. So during these projects, there's an emphasis on the removal of incompatible species in the jurisdictional right-of-way, or just along the power lines in general, hazard trees and incompatible brush species, which is on Vashon Island, anything that's less than 4 inches in diameter. Significant trimming, specifically the removal of 25% or more of the canopy, is considered a removal and must be treated as a removal during permitting to avoid any code violations. So I know Sean had kind of mentioned some terms like control zone. So essentially when you go to build a house, you have to build that house to code. Well, it's the same thing when you're installing new equipment or replacing equipment. You have to build a code, right? So Yeah, essentially, if you top a tree, it's the worst thing you can do for it. Significant trimming can lead to that area becoming a vector for disease, or it can also lead to decay, which is going to compromise the tree. So, especially for conifers, you're removing the apical bud and weakening the structural integrity of that tree, which can be a huge problem around the power lines, especially
Lindsay,
on
I'll have to, we're running out of time.
I'm closing sentence right now.
Okay.
I just want to let everyone know that I'm willing to meet with you individually if you have any concerns about reducing tree removals on your property or adjacent to your property in the jurisdictional right-of-way. I urge you to reach out.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have a few minutes for questions, and we might have a lot of questions, in which case I would ask Jake to have people jot down their questions so that we can be sure that everybody gets questions answered. No, wait.
Oh, sorry. Franchise right-of-way is different than an easement. We have an agreement with King County to operate our facilities within the road. And if we can't fit in there, like I mentioned before about clear zone, we can't fit in that location, then we go out and go get easements. Uh-huh.
Cannot hear Jake. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, could you repeat the question? I'm not sure what we're talking about here.
Can he please turn on the microphone? We can't hear him.
It wasn't on.
Cannot hear Jake.
Now it's on. You hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So all I'm saying is I heard all about easements and stuff, but I didn't hear anything about unmaintained right-of-ways where an easement is probably on a person's deed or something, right? But three owners later, they probably don't see that. But the part I'm trying to bring up is that a lot of times I had conflict. Why are we in there as the road department? Because it's an unmaintained right-of-way, but they think it's their property. And so, but you can go in there too, because utility inspection, recognizes that.
Yeah, because if it's a platted, unmaintained roadway, we research it before.
So just one last thing, the tree wire that you put up, at least where in my run, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, now my power goes out maybe 2-3 times a year, or maybe a couple of hours or something like that, where before it used to go out 8 to 15 times, and one time for 8 days. So thank you.
Yep, thank you.
So I'd like to take a question on Zoom. Steve Bergman.
Thanks for all those great talks. It's great to learn all the great programs you're doing. I have a question for Lindsay about all of the removed trees and organic material that you guys obtain. We have just received $5 million from the King County Council to build a compost facility on the island, and I wonder if we could get your who we talk to make sure that that organic material stays on the island in our compost facility that should be built in the next couple of years.
So that would be me. We don't offer any stump grinding. So any tree removals, they're going to cut to grade. So they're going to cut it to the ground as close as possible. Everything under 7 inches is going to be chipped and typically hauled away unless you want it. So I would just need to know where to dump it.
So we can offer you a location to deposit it on the island so you don't have to haul it off and save you a lot of money.
That would be great. Typically, a lot of homeowners want wood chips, so I don't have to pay to dispose of it too often. But let me grab your information.
I'll put it in the
and
chat.
We'll go on to the next question.
Thank you.
Who's next in here?
of the persons that.
Please hold your mic up really close to your mouth.
I'm one of the people that will receive one of your easement assignments.
We're not going to talk about specific properties. We can only ask questions about in general at this meeting.
And they wanted to take 11 trees. My wife has asthma.
That's a specific property. That's not.
What can I then?
Because that was the conditions for them to come here. It is unfortunate, but
We have the questions to ask. Okay, then, okay. Would you like to read your contract that you'd like me to sign?
please, no. No, I'm terribly sorry. We need to not be rude in this meeting.
For those appearing, watching online, there is a pre-existing
Please.
case involving some folks.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Thumbs up.
Okay.
Can you?
Can you hear her on Zoom, everybody? Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Okay. So, first of all, it is unfortunate that this is a very important conversation for our community that need to discuss the issue. My understanding of this forum is that you guys are here, and we are actually together as members of this community group, here to establish whether this is an issue of importance to the island and what specifically needs to be addressed in the interests of islanders. And your mission also says that you're here to represent the island. So we must have full and open discussion about issues in order to be able to establish precisely what is important and how to move forward.
Tonight is the first meeting with Puget Sound Energy, and so we are limiting it to generic conversations. And if you have a question, please ask your question. We're right now in the question and answer session of the presentation.
So the key question really for the planning people, and unfortunately it doesn't look like there's any planning representatives here. Our street is affected by what's been called the tree wire project. What it actually means for our street, according to an analysis of the easements,
you're going into specific properties. We'll have to answer those questions by email.
It's not about, it's about what the tree wire project is. So it's weird that you're trying to stop even the question, but
in generic terms, you can ask about tree wire if you wish, but not specific properties.
So can we talk about the effect of the easement on our street?
No.
Okay. Well,
not at
that's
this
the
meeting.
reason I brought this issue to.
There will be
this.
time for these things.
So I have a question for the real estate people. A number of people on the street have received free Puget Sound Energy lawyer with the easement offer. Do you see that as problematic, given that a Puget Sound Energy paid lawyer is a conflict of interest?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to. We offer anyone, if they want to have our offers reviewed by an attorney, they're more than welcome to do that with their own lawyer that they choose.
Well, the real estate
that'd be me and
La
my
Bond,
companions.
La Bond is the contractor that you guys have put into place, offered a free lawyer to people in order to help them understand what an easement is and what their easement conditions. That having a paid for Puget Sound Energy lawyer is, yeah, it absolutely is.
Any lawyer you choose. could use any lawyer, and there's several here in this room that may be able to assist.
That's the way it should be to avoid
That's what I
conflict
offered
of
you.
interest.
So
yeah.
I don't want to go in the
So-
details of what I've communicated with you by email, and we've tried to reach you several times. I'm sort of imploring you, please talk to us, not everybody else around here. It's a conversation between Puget Sound Energy and with you.
Yeah, probably people are getting the
Okay,
idea that
thank
this
you
is a
very
very
much.
limited conversation.
Okay, Joe. Unmute yourself, Joe.
Okay, thank you. I have a general question, and that is,
Good.
I absolutely love underground wires for all the reasons of saving trees and the aesthetics of the island. It radically changes, you know, the experience of driving up a road that has underground wires. Is there a pathway possible that if islanders decided to and paid more or something, is there a pathway that we could work with you all to bury more power lines in the future? Because my 23 years, I haven't seen it much done except like whole communities like Gold Beach, Lower Gold Beach were buried in, and it's really quite a difference. Anyway, that's my question.
Can it be
I have a
answered, or-
couple responses, quick, or sorry, Sean. Okay, I'll go and then you could finish if there's anything else. One is it doesn't always save trees. I do want to mention that. So it depends on how close you are to the roots, right? You know, if you cut into the roots too much, obviously that could obviously kill the tree and you just don't see it right away. So there is that. So there's a space thing, as you know, there's a lot of trees, and can we fit the line in the right of way? And are there a lot of utilities in the right of way? It just is a very case by case situation. So there's that to mention, but and I apologize for this next part. I don't remember the name of it, but there is a cost, and maybe Sean remembers, but there is a cost sharing. I think you're shaking your head, Sean. There's a cost sharing option where yes, landowners can opt to pay part of the project, where we're saying it doesn't need to be undergrounded, right? There's not reasons to underground it, but if you want to, it is X number of dollars extra, and then there's a cost sharing option. So we can look into that and get you more information, but that's a possibility.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one more question.
So for those islanders who receive notice of a interest in an easement, and and they might, and if they have some questions or concerns, who do they reach out to?
The person that sent them the letter.
Okay. And would that be you, or is there a best number to reach somebody out?
I am the supervisor of the group. Okay. But like I said earlier, Linda and Michelle have been covering Vashon jobs. We've also used contractors to bolster our own numbers. LaBonde Land is a contractor of ours, as well as HDR Engineering, and also Contract Land Services. These are all big outfits that have a bunch of experts in the field. And I just supervise the group, you know. But, you know, if you want to contact me, you're more than welcome to contact me, or any one of those. You know, I'm sort of surprised sometimes that people get a letter from us and it says, if you have any questions, call, you know, and they don't.
Okay.
They do some other methodology that befuddles me.
And for those, this is kind of a dovetails into this. For those people who receive that letter, what is there something they should know? What should they know about what PSE is asking or requesting of them?
Let's see. The letter is pretty specific of what we're asking for easement-wise. Prior to us doing any of these projects that were up on the screen earlier, we sent a community letter to all the meters in that area, everybody that has a PSE account. So our media group, they targets them and sends out multiple letters. For example, 115th Avenue that we're working on received a series of 3 letters if you had a PSE account to your PSE address. So if you live somewhere else, you may have not received it. Yeah, but if it's the account on your address at PSE, you received one of these letters in the mail, maybe a card or a flyer.
Okay. All right. Well, we can have them back if you're willing to come on back. We can ask some more questions. So this is our first conversation with PSE around this, and we'll see where we go, but this is a generic introduction. How does PSE do this? What are their policies? And, you know, there will be other opportunities to have discussions. Okay. Thank you all very much for sharing this information. I certainly learned a lot about how it all works. Next, we have Mary Bruno, who's going to talk about, does Vashon have enough water? Based on the article she wrote in the Beachcomber. Mary.
Yes, I'm here.
You're
How are
on.
you? Hi, Diane. Thanks for having me, everybody. How you doing? I'll get right to the point. I want to talk about just briefly, for a little context, just the genesis of this post that I wrote, and then a little bit about the post, and then I'll open it up for questions if anybody has any. Since I joined the Groundwater Protection Committee more than 5 years ago now, there's been discussion on and off about this question of, do we have enough water? It seems to come up time and again, and it's come up mostly in the context of our need for more affordable housing, which, as you all probably know, has become more of a hot topic lately. So recognizing that building affordable housing and protecting the water supply are equally important in my estimation, it seemed that this was an opportunity to start a public conversation about how we might do both. And this kind of dovetails with a report that the Groundwater Committee is working on about this very question. So, and all this information gathering and sharing is really important, because before we can have a truly productive conversation, we have to get informed. And that was something I thought I could try to help with in the public sphere, at least. So I decided to start with a story about water, since I am, after all, on the Groundwater Committee. But also because over the last 4 years of blogging about groundwater issues, I've interviewed, I think it's pretty much all but one of the operators who manage the island's large Group A water districts. And I've always been amazed and humbled by how little I knew and continue to not know about where the water comes from and what it takes to deliver it to the tap. I just started work on the next post, which will spotlight the realities and challenges of housing, which I know very little about. So I'm excited to talk about the local housing to the local housing experts. But I want to take a minute right here to stress something that's really important to me, and I think to all of us as a community. And that is that this post, the conversation that might ensue from it, is not a zero-sum battle between water and housing, and it really shouldn't ever be that. It's the first step towards daylighting some of the very real needs and challenges and complexities of both those worlds. Because if we want to come together in an informed way to find solutions, and I think we do, then we need to be aware of and acknowledge what's involved in building affordable housing and delivering potable water. So with that as a background, the basic premise, or maybe the caution of my first post about water, was that having water doesn't de facto mean having access to that water. And so we would be wise to consider 4 things when we consider the question of enough. Number one is the obvious follow-up question of enough for what? How much water do we need and where do we need it to go? And then a corollary to that, of course, how much water do we have? And can we count on that volume holding steady over time, given, as one example, the uncertainties of climate change? The second consideration is, where do we find that water on the island? Mostly we tap surface water sources, streams, springs, and wells. Water District 19, for instance, draws about 60% of its supply from Beale and Shingle Mill Creeks, but there are restrictions on how much the district is allowed to take from either of those streams. And when surface water sources aren't enough, we drill. But groundwater is a lot trickier. Vashon, Steve Bergman's in the audience, he can speak more eloquently to this than I can, but to reduce it to one sentence, Vashon has a really jumbled geology, which makes locating productive pockets of potable water a risky proposition. Some would say, and I think I said this myself, a crapshoot. The third consideration is, if we can find water, how do we get it? And the answer to that is, it takes a lot of wells and pumps and pipes and people and chemicals and assorted heavy equipment and computer hardware and software, and all of that costs money. So the fourth question is, who pays for that? And the answer is we do. Water customers ultimately foot the bill for operations. You need a treatment solution, rate hike. You need to replace 6,000 feet of vintage pipe at $400 a foot, like Water District 19 is trying to do, rate hike. The loan payments on Water District 19's current pipe replacement project will cost the district about $160,000 a year for the next 20 years. So my takeaway from all of this in the blog post is that on paper, we have enough water. The question really is, how do we afford to find it and tap it and treat it and transport it from where it is to where we need it to be? And can we count on that water supply to remain consistent into the foreseeable future? And those questions, those conversations, debates, discussions, they are not just the concern of builders and water purveyors. That's a conversation that we need to have as a community. But we are all stakeholders in that conversation because the solution or the lack of one affects us all in one way or another. And that is my introduction, and I'm happy to entertain questions and hope to God that I can answer them.
Thank you so very much, Mary. Water is a critically important issue for islanders, and especially when it comes to when we're talking about development. Do we have enough water and for how much development? So are there any folks who'd like to ask some questions about it? Come on up. Jeff, there you go. Is that on? It's on, okay.
Yes, I'm Jeff Schnells, and I'd like to ask if there's been any comprehensive testing of the groundwater for pollutants. In the past, King County has told us that they won't pave our roads because they're afraid it's going to somehow hurt the groundwater. So I just want to know if the groundwater has been tested around the island, and do you know what's in it or where the pollutants are coming from?
Yeah, the ground, well, see, this is an interesting thing, I think, because on the island, there are seven large what they call Group A water districts, and a selection of smaller ones. I think there's about 15 smaller ones. And there's also even smaller groups of people who get their water as a collective, Group B districts. And the Group A's and the Group B's are subject to regulation. And the regulation changes. I mean, the water districts, the large water districts like Water District 19, Westside Water, Dockland Water Company, those are all subject to pretty strict regulation by the Department of Health and the Department of Ecology. So that water is tested. If you're in one of those water systems, you can pretty much not worry about it. They're testing for arsenic, they're testing for nitrates, they're testing for manganese, and those are the kinds of things that are a danger to public health. But there's a lot of people on the island who have individual wells, and once those wells are certified as the water's potable and the well is intact and operational, but that gets certified by the DOE, those people are basically on their own. So they can test, they're supposed to test, they should test probably once a year depending on what they're testing for, but we don't know if all of those people do. So I guess the answer to the question is, yeah, I think that the pollutants that the DOH looks at, and I know there's a few people in the audience that know more about this than I do, so they should weigh in here. The pollutants that DOH is really interested in are arsenic and nitrates, and those are tested for on a regular basis if you're in a large water district. If you have your own well, then really that's your responsibility.
So Felicity, I saw that you wanted to raise your hand. Could you go ahead and speak, ask your question, or make your comment?
Yes, hi. You mentioned surface water, and I'm in Water District, Westside Water, and we aren't allowed to use surfaced water, and so I wondered where it is that you're allowed to use surface water.
Well, like I said earlier, Water District 19 pulls from Beal Creek and Shingle Mill Creek.
Oh. So why is it different for different water districts?
I guess it depends on the surface water that they're looking at, or their ability to access certain kinds of surface water. And in fact, I think that that Westside Water actually does draw a little from Shingle Mill Creek.
Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Steve Bergman said that Water District 19 also pulls from Ellis Creek.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Okay, other questions? Anyone here in the room have a question for Mary? Okay. Jake has a question, and Morgan later.
So one water purveyor on the island made a comment to me that we draw more water than the Department of Ecology would really like to allow, in total out of the aquifer.
Well, the Vashon is now a closed system, so like technically, you're not allowed to draw more water than we're currently drawing. But so I guess the answer to that question is, well, okay, here's a couple of different things that I found out in my reporting. According to studies, the amount of water that humans on the island consume is about 1.3% of the alleged total volume of water we have, which is, a pretty minuscule amount. But since it's a sole source aquifer and it's a closed system, I mean, the only water that we have really is the water that falls on the island as a result of precipitation. Some of that, runs off in streams and springs. Some of that seeps into the groundwater. So I think that the Department of Ecology is obviously being extra careful about issuing water shares and water rights on the island right now, and has been for a while.
Okay, we don't have time for as many questions as we have up there, but Morgan had his hand up first. Go ahead, Morgan.
Yes, I need to put a comment in there on Mary's, I think, factually right on all of that. And in fact, this is a long-term ongoing discussion Mary and I are both on the Groundwater Protection Committee. She was, didn't give a full picture. She was long-time term limited chair of the thing, and I am the current drafted chair of the Groundwater Protection Committee. And I want to put perhaps a slightly different hat on. Mary, I view as a very good scientist and environmentalist, and I consider myself certainly also an environmentalist, but I'm also, I would say a housing advocate. I was chair of the Affordable Housing Committee, and really, I think we have a crisis on the island of housing. It's an existential community crisis. And one of the biggest challenges to getting multifamily housing on the island, there has not been a private developer doing multifamily on the island in decades. There's only been some very limited affordable housing projects. And the biggest constraint to that, in my view, is that there's no certainty and there isn't even water shares available for that. And a water moratorium like that is a very, very draconian tool. So the assumption is that there is not enough water to do housing. And on the Groundwater Protection Committee with Mary and also with what my leadership on it now, we've really been looking into the science, and I'll say it, my view, it's a little bit debatable, but I don't consider it. The science is really clear, there is enough water. That doesn't mean it's cheap to get, doesn't mean you can get it the way we've been getting it, doesn't mean rates don't go up. But there is actually arguably and demonstrably plenty of water. We just have to value it, and we have to value it also with the housing crisis. And so I think by saying, we have a sole source aquifer and it's very expensive to go out there and get some of the water, we have data to show that there is water there and it can be gotten. And I really think we need to reevaluate whether we want to have a water moratorium like we have right now, because that is basically saying we're not valuing affordable housing so people can stay here and we can have a vibrant economy and we can have workforce housing and that sort of thing. So I just need that.
Thank you.
Out there. Okay.
Thank you, Morgan. We're going to have to move on. We're have to move on to the other agenda items. Obviously, there's differences of opinion as to whether or not we have enough water and can get it. So we can always revisit this very important issue down the road. So next we have King County roads update and comprehensive plan update. And Jake, would you like to say anything about the roads in your brief conversation that you had with John Taylor earlier in the meeting? And I'll just put up those pictures again.
So not to reference anything specifically, but I ran out with John Taylor from Local Services Director and mentioned one more thing that wasn't mentioned, which was the where the Metro bus stops at the high school is the wrong place because there's not enough sight distance, and the other one's actually better, more sight distance and a ped pathway. But in the bigger picture, My goal tonight was to convey to him, and I think I got his agreement, that we need to have more FaceTime representative or something at our meetings with somebody from the roads department, because there's so many issues with that. You know, trees hanging over the road, potholes, just all the things that even utilities roads deals with, that utility inspection, and so many more issues that I can't think of right at the moment. But so that's a really big deal. And things like this, you know, tell me that road right there behind the pharmacy where old folks go to get their medication and stuff like that is a safe thing. It's not. And it doesn't take a day and a half to grind it up and repave it, and it doesn't cost that much money. So we need to build a better relationship with John Taylor. And he's not a roads guy per se. He's responsible for them, but he's more of the DDES, the building deeper and things like that, and permitting and stuff. So there's value there in him also. But more specifically, I think a lot of people, roads are falling apart, shoulders are trashed out, don't meet standards, and we need to engage better with the roads department.
And one of the things that we need to engage with is pedestrian safety at the four-way stop. Oh, he's on. Okay.
John is present via Zoom, I guess. John, and just to be clear, I think Jake did show John these photos that,
Yes.
that everyone is now seeing online.
That's right.
So,
yeah, before the meeting, because John had to go because he had to get on the ferry. John, would you like to say anything about this?
Yeah, hi everyone. John Taylor, Director of the Department of Local Services. I can see the chair I was sitting in a couple of minutes ago, and I'm no longer occupying it because I'm in line for the 8:15 ferry. And apologies for having to get out early. And every time I come out, I'm reminded of the challenges that the island is facing with the ferry schedule, because it used to be a lot easier to do like this and get home at a reasonable hour. So apologies for stepping out, but I'm still here. Yeah, so pretty much everything that Jake highlighted, I'm going to follow up. Well, everything he highlighted, I'm going to follow up on. Some of them I think are fairly light lifts. Some may take a little more work with the King County Roads traffic department, but there's nothing there that's insurmountable in my view. So I appreciate you all surfacing the issues. And then I would just say to everybody on the comprehensive plan, the County Council had their first land use meeting where they did an overview of the comprehensive plan, and they outlined all of the proposed zoning changes for Vashon, of which there are a number. I would strongly encourage, there's going to be a long process at council now. There was a long process that the Department of Local Services did, meeting with folks on Vashon to talk about a variety of things, affordable housing, kind of zoning densities, things like that. And we'll be going over all of that again with the council. You have a new council member. Teresa Mosqueda has replaced Joe McDermott, your longtime council member. And I know she was asking a lot of questions of planning staff at that council meeting. So I would just suggest folks who have a strong interest in land use and zoning to really closely track that council process. They have a pretty elaborate schedule up there. They're going to be having a lot of public meetings, and it's a great way to engage on this. And you have a council member that's very, very interested, and I'm sure would be, want to be talking with the community about your thoughts on what's in the comprehensive plan. The only other thing I have for you is be aware that we, Department of Local Services, are sponsoring a grant program for folks who, during the COVID-19 pandemic, had vandalism of property and would like to recover replacement costs for things like broken windows or graffiti removal. I know that we had a number of robberies in the tail end of that period. And so if any damage was done, you're eligible for up to $5,000 in replacement costs, or for mitigating things like cameras or alarm systems. So just if there are any business folks listening or private property owners, but it's really more targeted at businesses, be thinking about that. And you can reach out to me or just go to kingcounty.gov, local services, and there's information on our homepage about applying for that grant. But if you want to short circuit it, just Diane has my email and I can put it in the chat.
Yes, you
and
can certainly contact me. You can send a message to the community council at their website. However, we'll make sure to get in touch. Okay.
And then that's pretty much it, Diane. Just Jeff, sorry I had to run out on you, but I will give you a call tomorrow. And apologies, I've been trying to return your calls. It's just with the weather we've been having, there's been a lot going on the last couple of weeks. So everybody stay safe, and hopefully your power stays on with those fancy wires.
Yeah, those fancy wires. Thank you very much, John, for showing up tonight. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you at future meetings. Okay, and I would just like to mention that the Community Council has a Vashon Town Planning Committee. It's headed up by, let me change something here. The chair of it is David Vogel, and he is holding a meeting on Monday evening, January 29th from 7 to 9 for that committee to review the county executive's proposal for the comprehensive plan as it affects Vashon Town. You can email David Vogel at dsvogel.attorney, atty@gmail.com if you wish to be involved. That information is in the agenda for the meeting. If you have a link to the agenda, you can find it there. So now, Justin Hirsch, are you with us to give us a bit of a update on the ferry situation?
I am, and I'll be
very good.
As brief as I can. So by this point, I think all of us have probably seen the Seattle Times article about the new service contingency plan. In the service contingency plan, WSF finally acknowledged that it will not be able to restore our full 3-boat service for quite a long time. Right now, that looks like a minimum of 4 years through 2028, quite possibly longer, and the constraint is availability of vessels and new vessel construction. As someone who has to set my alarm very early in the morning to commute off island to work, also in the maritime industry, in the private sector, I'm really not happy about that. And, you can read all about my comments, my opinion on that in this week's Beachcomber. So I won't belabor that, but there are a couple things specifically that I want to touch on. Now that the truth has sort of finally come out about the realities of service restoration, the most important of which right now is that, as chair of the Ferry Advisory Committee, I have formally asked WSF to get busy rewriting the 2-boat schedule. The 2-boat schedule they have was an emergency schedule. It was never supposed to last this long. It was created, as I recall, without the kind of community input that WSF is supposed to have. And so there are an awful lot of problems with that 2-boat schedule, and we know it needs to be rewritten. WSF, for their part, has acknowledged the need to rewrite that 2-boat schedule, but is telling us that they lack the resources to do that. So it is true that by statute, WSF is obligated to go through an extensive community planning process in order to rewrite that schedule. They don't just, sit down and whip it out with a pencil and do it. That would be the same kind of public meetings that we saw just before COVID when they rewrote the 3-boat schedule. So that's what needs to happen. I think the most important takeaway from this meeting, if we have one, is to, when we're reaching out to our legislators, our state legislators, and we're talking about our concerns with ferries, the immediate ask from Vashon should specifically be to give ferries the resources that it needs to rewrite that schedule. So that from what they're telling me right now, that means hiring a transportation planner who can spearhead that process. I'm so frustrated about that, I can barely speak, but that's the reality. That is the real truth of the reality that we're going to live with for quite some time. to put some links in the chat here for some resources. We're gonna have a long road to the restoration of ferry service. And so that means we're gonna have to get better at figuring out how to survive in the immediate run with what we have. Some of that is gonna be strategically planning our trips. And some of that is going to be getting better at using the resources that are out there for finding out what is going on with the ferries. Okay, so there's a lot of us turn to Facebook groups, various social media outlets. Hey, I'm in line for this. You know, what are we seeing? You know, something like that can work, but I wonder how many of us have signed up for the WSF text alerts. That's not always complete information in my experience, but it's a really good place to start. It's a really good place to start with figuring out what's going on with ferries. Okay. Once we have all signed up for the ferry alerts and we've read the alerts, you know, probably some kind of social media in which we can hopefully productively discuss kind of what kind of experience we're seeing immediately can be a really fast, unofficial and informal way for islanders to share information. Yeah, there's another, you know, there's obviously the vessel watch system through WSF. Quite frankly, I find it slow, and that website has been broken for most of this week. Those boats, as does all commercial vessel traffic, has to put out what's called an AIS signal, stands for Automated Identification System. There are publicly available apps that will report that AIS data out over the internet. As someone who works in the maritime industry, I rely pretty heavily on one called Marine Traffic. It's available on Android and Apple. And that will give you a real idea of where the boats are in real time. In my grandest vision of how we would find out where the boats are and what's going on, we would develop some kind of island-based resource that would track where the boat is supposed to be based on the printed schedule, right? You could actually take that printed schedule and, because a crossing is a known time, translate where it is supposed to be into real-time GPS coordinates, then compare it to where it is in real life and calculate that difference and report it. I don't have the technical ability to do that. If anybody here has the ability to do that and wants to get a hold of me, please use the that Vashon-FAC@gmail email address. The next thing I got to report on is that is the medical preference loading system. So WSF shared with me recently that actually Vashon Island has very, very, very low utilization of the medical preference loading system. So what that effectively is an ADA accommodation in public transportation, right? That's the ferry system saying, not just if you happen to have a doctor's appointment, but if a doctor will work with you and identify that waiting for a long time in a ferry line on either side of the water would cause a hardship, that you then become entitled to not necessarily first on, first off loading, but a guaranteed spot on the next sailing. Okay, so people are traveling for medical appointments. I mean, chemotherapy, dialysis, all of the kind of specialty stuff that, you know, we may have to travel off island to get. Take advantage of the medical preference system. I will put a link to that in the chat when I'm done speaking here. You know, it doesn't necessarily, you know, the medical preference system isn't going to make a boat appear, but it can help ease some of the worst impacts for having to travel off island for medical issues. And so that's something that we really need to take advantage of in the meantime. Following up on another important subject, the Fauntleroy Terminal project is moving forward. Our WSF has identified a number of possible alternatives for Fauntleroy Terminal construction. I believe there are 9 alternatives. If we, you know, we as islanders in this terminal project, Fauntleroy Terminal project have really a once in a lifetime opportunity to give input to WSF on what kind of terminal we need at Fauntleroy. So everyone who's ever complained about the lack of a stoplight at the end of the Fauntleroy ferry dock, we complained about long waiting lines on Fauntleroy Way, not having access to bathrooms, line cutters, all of those issues. We need to send those comments to WSF through the email that's in the link for the Fauntleroy Terminal project that I put in the chat there. I don't want to totally bury people with links and emails here, but there is a Fauntleroy Terminal project email in that link. If you're concerned about line cutters, if you're concerned about, ticketing, if you're concerned about the traffic light at the end of the dock, WSF needs to hear that, and they need to hear that from us, and they need to hear it now. In general, my personal opinion is that we need to be supporting what's called Alternative C, which is the largest possible dock that they can build. It would hold, according to WSF's policy, it would hold 1.5 times the capacity of an Issaquah ferry on the dock, which means that there's no more line up Fauntleroy Way. There's no more, loading the boat, waiting for ticketing and all that kind of thing. That's the level of capacity that we need. There are a couple of lesser options that we could probably survive with, but I think we need to be very vocal in advocating for option C. So I think that's all I have right now. And Diane, if we have some time, I'll take questions.
Yep, Bernie O'Malley has a question. Go ahead, Bernie.
Yes, thank you. Is there a connection yet between your group and the Muckashoots and the other tribes who are doing the healing center on the old BCC? And they've had discussions about they're going to get a 24/7 ferry established for their own needs. Asking the question, is your group thinking about making a connection to that group for additional ferry service? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have not personally had any contact with them. So just to be clear, I'm the chair of the Ferry Advisory Committee, which is a 3-person volunteer committee of island residents that, is in charge of sort of trumpeting information back to ferries. I know there's another separate group called Islanders for Ferry Action, and I think they may have had some contact. If somebody could email me a contact for that group at the Vashon FAC,
I'll do that.
That would be great.
For you. Yeah.
I'd love to know, what kind of resources they're thinking of bringing, and if there's any way that Islanders could benefit from that. I'm all about figuring out options.
Okay, Justin, thank you very much for that update. It's not good news, of course, but it's important that we know what's going on, and the links that you've provided will help us deal with this going forward.
Thanks so much, Diane.
Okay, next on the agenda, an update from the Affordable Housing Committee. Art Chippendale and Terry Sullivan. And not here this evening? Okay. All right, well, that saves us some time. Emily Scott from the Vashon Foodbank. Emily, you're on.
Hello. Thank you all for taking the time to hear an update from the food bank today. Let's see, should I be able to share my screen right now, Diane?
I can make you co-chair so you can.
That would be great. And I'll try to get rid of a lot of the riffraff in here. So I've got kind of a presentation that I could walk you all through with an update about the food bank's relocation project and the food bank in general. I'm happy to talk about any of the exciting and kind of challenging stuff going on with the food bank right now. This presentation I'll pull up is like way longer than the 10 minutes I have here. So I'll just fly through some stuff and feel free to like reiterate and ask questions. I'm happy to see, I think a lot of you in the room have already heard this whole spiel about the food bank. So, if I miss anything, any of you folks who are kind of on the inside, feel free to chime in. And that includes, oh, by the way, Deborah Gusson, who's here right now, is also chair of the food bank board currently. So Deborah will certainly hop in and fill in any info wherever I skip a beat. So sharing my screen. Okay, can you all, it's not technically a PowerPoint, it is a PDF document, so it might be a little bit goofy. Oh,
we can see it just fine.
Cutting to the end, that's the big surprise. I mean, this is a Beachcomber article, it's not a surprise. Oh, that's great. Here you can get a little preview of everything as I toggle through to the beginning. Close your eyes. All right, so hopefully all of you in the room are familiar with the Vashon Food Bank. It's been around for, gosh, what year is it? It's like 40 plus years on the island. Has been up at Sunrise Ridge, our current location, also home of the Seymour Health Clinic, since 1985 or so. So much like the clinic and Granny's Attic and lots of other organizations that have existed up there for a long time, the food bank has acknowledged for a long time now that we need a new facility to really meet our mission, or to really meet our mission to the greatest extent. A reminder that our mission is really focused on collaborating with partners in our community to increase the island's food security and to connect people to other supporting resources that help them thrive. So those three kind of foundational pieces are really critical to the work that the food bank does. We of course do that through offering free groceries to anyone who needs them. Our barriers to service are very low, so we ask for really minimal information. And really at the end of the day, we of course want to be able to report out information, but the questions we ask are just to delineate one individual and one household from another so we can report out aggregate data. Speaking of that aggregate data, and these figures are actually a little bit outdated. Right now, we're serving about 270 to 280 households per week. We recently pushed 300, which is a max for the food bank in its entire existence, as far as I know. Our summer meals program, or notably, that's about 15% of the island. So I think there, in many crowds, is a misperception about what working class kind of poverty on the island looks like. I guarantee every single one of you in the room either knows someone, whether discreetly or anonymously, who uses the food bank. Our summer meals program serves thousands of children and thousands of meals. Hundreds of resource connections per year through our Community Resource Connections program that is funded by King County's Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy. Totaling often over 500,000 pounds of groceries per year. I won't go into detail with all this, and Diane, maybe you can send this presentation to the whole group and folks can cull through it at their leisure and tell me what's wrong with it if they want to or not.
It's going to be included in the minutes of the meeting.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, that's great. The big takeaways here are that demand for food bank services are increasing more than ever before. So we're up 20 to 30% actually, depending on what time frame you look at over last year, and certainly up over 2019. Our donation streams are much less predictable, and by that I don't mean financial contributions, I mean food donations. So as many of you probably know, food banking generally has been really reliant on free food just from communities or from partner agencies like Food Lifeline and Northwest Harvest for decades. And that's really shifting now, where lots of food banks, the Vashon Food Bank included, is focusing on increasing purchased food to provide more reliable access. Diane sent me a handful of questions before this presentation, and one of them was, why the food bank hasn't had eggs and milk for the last couple of weeks. And the answer to that is we are actively, and I would say pretty aggressively, looking for really reliable and cost-effective sources for those kinds of items. And of course, eggs and milk aren't the only things. We want to be able to provide plenty of, frozen meat, sliced bread, or other kinds of bread. We currently purchase, maybe $500 of produce from Charlie's Produce on a weekly basis. So if you see the food bank asking for more financial contributions at what used to be food drives and looks like more like fund drives these days, that's because we're working to deepen our connections in the community to increase our fundraising efforts so we can use those dollars to purchase wholesale, as opposed to asking folks to go purchase retail and then donate the food, because we can increase our overall impact for households with wholesale purchases. So we've got this beautiful, I just had a kind of a heyday with this really fancy image a while ago. Our 3 kind of pronged shopping model with in-person pickup on Wednesdays, order for pickup on Wednesday through Friday, and then home deliveries continue to be at a historic high of about 140 households per week. So those, we plan to continue home deliveries and in-person shopping well into the future, and we'll offer anyone the opportunity to have a bag packed for them and then to pick it up curbside if they need to. The idea being, we believe there's dignity in choice and that people should have choice of the kind of food they get and of the way they get it to reduce barriers to service. So here's a overview of our strategic priorities that overall are angling towards building a progressive culture of human dignity and respect. So that's both for our volunteers, our customers, our staff, donors, and just the general community. And so we do all that good work in what I have come to describe as a suboptimal facility. So any of you who have been to Sunrise Ridge know that it's got a beautiful view of Mount Rainier and a couple radio towers that have osprey babies in them for half the year. I would say those are 2 of the property's redeeming qualities. Otherwise, there's, decades old military buildings that are kind of falling apart, really cannot be renovated. Lots of big question marks about septic systems, and it's just a property that is destined for something different than really human intensive occupation right now. Here's just some more, of our pictures of our current facility with outdoor freezers, indoor storage space that does not do anything for volunteer or customer safety. We have to rent shipping containers in order to, meet the capacity for safe food storage. So let's see, here's just a little data about a survey we did in 2021, asking all of our customers, if they would prefer a food bank that's kind of remote and removed or one closer to town, which by a lot of different metrics will increase access, visibility, and access being defined by like ADA accessibility, but also on the bus line and close to other services. And these kind of data points here are all to say that lots of customers would be fine with any location. But for a whole variety of reasons, we've determined that a location in town is really moves the needle more significantly on multiple different criteria that we're shooting for. So our long-term vision is a new home that's accessible, safe, inclusive, and dignified that aligns with our values. And after years and years of conversation and working, again, within our community, we have entered into a business deal with the Vashon United Methodist Church. So hopefully a lot of you saw the article that recently came out in the Beachcomber. The project scope for getting us over there, as this slide talks about, is construction of a new and this has changed a little bit as design and development does, but 3,800 to 3,900 square foot building with warehouse and grocery store. So that's this green building at the bottom here. And hopefully you all are familiar with the VUMC property right across from the Euphorium Weed Store and what used to be Mika's Kitchen. And we're going to purchase the existing building, which is currently known as the Education Building, that has historically hosted a lot of community kind of resource events already, like the MRC's vaccine clinics. There's currently a twice annual health fair that's put on by the Vashon Social Service Network. A couple AA groups meet there. It's already kind of a community resource hub, and our intention with this building in particular is to really intensify its use and really be able to like more efficiently manage it as a resource hub than it currently is. We also have a long-term ground lease. So ultimately we will own these 2 buildings and pay a ground lease for the land that it sits on. That lease is baseline 30 years with 2 10-year options for extension. So functionally a 50-year ground lease. And here's a kind of blurry, I don't know why, but overhead image looking northwest of the new facility. Again, a couple of these scopes have changed a little bit because we've gone through one round of value engineering, as I'm learning all these, the learning curve for, construction management is pretty steep. So I'm just soaking it all up. So this image has changed a little bit as we've really been conscious of keeping cost to a reasonable amount. But this is that new building I was talking about with a covered loading area, which we don't have now. Like an aesthetically pleasing, but nothing fancy, and bigger than we currently have shopping area for grocery shopping. And then a warehouse with this slope shed roof warehouse with slightly higher clearance. So we can use, a pallet jack to store longer term things up high and just use the space more efficiently than we're able to now. And again, this is the existing building that's already there that will see some minimal renovations, but by and large, we're keeping the structure of the building intact because it is in surprisingly good shape for how old it is. Here's a view looking like southwest, kind of a customer perspective. Of course, this, fancy art rendering is just something our architects kind of pulled in, but offering people this main entrance right here would be east facing. So offering folks a kind of discreet entry if they need it. And the existing building and the new building will be connected by kind of a vestibule with, just a reception desk to help people kind of navigate their way through. So the idea, really more than just building a new food bank, is moving the food bank to this property and creating a community resource hub. There's the loading dock, which I love because it's like, not the most sexy as far as the general public might be concerned, but for anybody who works in a warehouse setting and doesn't have a covered loading dock with proper garage door bays would know that this is a serious improvement over what we are working with currently. Just a few more snapshots of what the interior of that vestibule could look like. And again, don't get too hung up. If you're a architecty or detailed person, don't get too hung up on like, what is the material of this flashing on the corner of the desk? It's like, they're just kind of loose renderings, but what we're working towards. Those tables probably won't look like that because that looks like a cafeteria, but it's just an idea of what the waiting area in the current food bank building might look like. And then a rendering of the interior of the grocery store. So like I mentioned earlier, we're shooting for nothing ostentatious or, wildly fancy, but sustainable, as more aesthetically pleasing and accessible than what we currently have. And really flexible so that we can invite lots of community partners to come in and join that resource hub model. Our project schedule, we're actually on target right now. We're really in kind of a crunch period where if you asked me to guarantee that this was accurate, I would not do that because of two items, one being King County permitting, and the second being our fundraising progress, which is going really well so far. And our board is establishing criteria for benchmarks of when we decide we want to push back groundbreaking or not. So that's not on the table right now, but we're building up on muscle memory to make important decisions if and when we need to. So hopefully you can see down here, we are right in the middle. We're like right here, which is exactly where they said we would be, which is amazing. And groundbreaking is scheduled for like the fourth quarter 2025. I'm sorry, grand opening, not groundbreaking. Apologies for this really fuzzy image here. It's a screenshot from a different document. But the figures that we're currently working with as far as cost is between 6.5 and 7 million. That reflects all hard costs for construction and renovation of the existing building, soft cost, including our design costs, permitting, closing on purchase of the education building, as well as some of our internal costs. Like we have a capital campaign manager helping us manage, capital campaigns are actually pretty complicated, it turns out. So those costs are all reflected here. As Deborah and I were just talking about today, construction projects, as many of you I'm sure know, they evolve over time. So these figures could change slightly or dramatically in the future, but we are really conscious of and committed to keeping costs within a reasonable realm. Knowing that the community has experienced multiple capital projects and, contributed a lot of money and maybe felt a little bit burned afterward. So to date, we have raised about 32% of funds. That's a combination of some government funding, a handful of really, really generous community contributions from major donors, and some local institutions like the local Thriftway. They were one of our early donors, came in with a really generous 6-figure gift. In the grocery store area of the new food bank will be named after Norm Matthews, who I'm sure many of you knew. He was a patriarch of the community and just passed away a couple of years ago. So we're seeing really generous support and of course have a long way to go, but many pathways to reach 100% of our goal. Let's see. Oh, for some reason, oh, there we go. Again, this is a really loose kind of snapshot of the message here is that our portfolio for prospective like revenue for the project to meet our project goal is really broad. So we're engaging with lots of government entities in hopes of getting public funds. Individual contributions, of course, like I just mentioned. We've got a long list of foundations, the prospects of which are over a couple $1 million that we're cultivating relationships with and we'll be putting in applications for coming up here. It's worth saying, I think, that a lot of those foundations, and maybe some of you know this, but they will have thresholds for when you can apply. Say, like they want to see that you've got 40%, 60, up to 80% of funds committed before they'll hop in. Because much like individuals making an investment, they don't want their investment to fall flat. So we are navigating a lot of relationships right now.
Excuse me, Emily, we need to really move it along if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So when
and the questions that I submitted to you, I'd really like to see those answers.
Yeah, hopefully I can and have addressed a lot of those or will before this is done. I kind of like wove them into the dialogue. You can take a look at these. I included some kind of comparative slides about other food banks that are going through similar processes. And hopefully, Diane, you can share the link I sent you. There was just an article today about the Ballard Food Bank and the community resource hub that they've built. And the architects they worked with just happened to be Graham Baba, the architects that we are also working with, who speak really well to the model and have their hands in this business. Also notable here is that these other organizations, their overall campaign goals are significantly higher than ours. So, a fair number of people have kind of balked at the dollar figure. And this is just kind of comparative, comparisons to show that that's the cost of doing business. And we're keeping up with food bank industry best standards these days. There's another one. So I'm also happy to say, we've done a lot of work with the Vashon Social Service Network to vision what kind of activities might happen in this resource hub. In that article that just came out in the Beachcomber, Vashon Youth and Family Services has actually already moved their Family Place program over to the education building and into the sanctuary on the property. So the vision for that whole facility to become really this community-oriented space is already happening even before the food bank has started construction or moved over there. So this is just a showy-offy picture of me with Pramila Jayapal, who came to visit and tour our current facility and the future facility. She came out because there is an $800,000 request in the current federal budget that is in purgatory, as many of you know. So once that budget is passed, that $800,000 will be freed up for this project. So there's the kind of quick and dirty of it. Let's see. What of those questions did I miss, Diane? Or
well, one of the questions was with Northwest Harvest.
Yes.
Northwest Harvest is one of the main suppliers of food.
Yeah.
And they've decided they're not going to be sending food anymore to Vashon. I'd like you to talk about that, please.
Yeah. So they've never sent food to Vashon. We go pick it up on a weekly basis. We actually get deliveries only from sources that we purchase from. But yes, by the end of 2024, Northwest Harvest will be cut out of their partner network. And even beyond that, like I mentioned earlier, the food donation situation is less reliable than it used to be. So we're focusing on, like I said, increasing local dollars and local fundraising through a few different arms to increase purchasing. Our operations manager, Duncan, is constantly, seeking out new sources, and we're really conscious of using donor dollars in the most responsible way possible. So looking for the best wholesale deals. We also are reaching out to other like off island. We already do grocery rescue from Thriftway and from IGA. And we're, making a short list of other off island retailers who probably have a connection to Vashon through, Vashon residents being customers or otherwise, who we might be able to establish donation relationships with. So we are, looking for multiple different resources, whether through purchasing or increasing food donations, to make sure that we continue to offer people a wide variety of food. Yeah.
Another of the questions was, because of what happened at the Vashon Center for the Arts, there's some concern to make sure that there's money set aside for maintaining the building.
Yeah. So that overhead maintenance cost we're really committed to analyzing ahead of time and having a thorough business model in place. That's still forthcoming, but it's very front of mind. And I'm happy to say that some folks who are involved with, because you asked about VCA in particular, some folks who are involved with VCA, both on the fundraising side and then general operations, they've had plenty of time to kind of analyze where things went a little wonky or some kind of like hiccups along the way. And we've got a couple different people who are, willing to be on our team and are kind of giving us consult about how to avoid some of those situations. So I don't have hard answers for you right now about overhead costs, but it's very front of mind and something we're committed to managing. One element that can, I think, keep overhead costs down is the possibility of us being the building owners for the education building, leasing space to other nonprofits who are interested in having office space there, and or, having other like sliding scale fees involved. So there's a couple different revenue streams that we're looking towards, and just making sure overhead costs stay reasonable. So we're very aware.
Wonderful. So Armin, you have a question.
Yes, I put them in the chat too, but 3 factual questions. How many square feet, new square feet to be constructed for that $6.5 million? How long is it taking to get the permit? And how much in fees to King County to get the permit?
Fees to King County?
Correct.
That is a great question. And you know what? If you don't mind, I'm not going to answer it immediately because I could reach out to our project team. We've got a couple project managers at JLL, Jones Lang LaSalle, who are helping us, manage all the details. I can reach out to them and get you a direct answer to that, but I don't want to misspeak right now. The permitting process, we put our permits in I believe, and gosh, Deborah, if I'm misspeaking and you remember better, correct me. I believe they went in early November. And right now we're expecting to hear back from them to have permits in hand by May of this year. And of course I'm have heard no shortage of, like sad stories about King County really dragging their feet. We have talked with John Taylor, who I don't know if he's still on here, but to the extent that we can make folks aware of the project who might be able to, like John, actually, I don't think he would mind me saying, we had a meeting with him in Bong Santo Domingo, the Vashon local services guy. And they both agreed, with King County, there is no fast tracking permits. It's just not a thing. But people in a position of authority like that can highlight a project and make sure that the permitting department understands the importance of the project to the community. So kind of giving them like passive incentive to not push it back on the back burner. And what was I did that in reverse order, Armin. What was your first question?
How many new square feet to be constructed for $6.5 million?
Right. So and again, that 6.5 is those hard costs, also soft cost and internal costs. So of the hard cost, it's about 4.8 right now. That's 3,900 new square feet plus renovations to the existing education building. So total like hard costs touching the property is over 7,000 square feet. And that's a lot of numbers too. I can follow up with you if you're interested about, more of that. I'm just remembering, if I have just a couple more minutes, Diane, one of your questions also was.
Actually, we don't.
I believe.
Afraid.
Okay, yeah. I was just going to say quickly that there is no threat of increased taxes or while we do have lines of funding from several different government agencies, we have no taxing authority and no potential levy. So there's no, at least as far as the food bank project is concerned, potential increase of Islanders tax dollars.
Thanks for sharing that. That's very important.
Yeah.
Okay.
If
Well,
anybody
we
else
need
has
to-
questions, I'm happy to answer by email or otherwise.
Okay. Thank you very much, Emily. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Now, I just want to take a moment to really thank the many volunteers that have helped keep the Vashon-Maury Community Council going in the last year in 2023. Here are the board members who have stepped up and have attended our board meetings and our community council meetings every month and have many, many emails and in between. Kim Roser, Michaela Olivari, Dustin Coe, Ben Carr, Jamila Stigall, Jessica Anakar, and John Affelter in 2023. Thank you. Well, me. Thank you. We're all volunteer, you see, so you can't have the staff. Yeah. Thank you all very, very much for being on the board. It's a lot of work and we need more board members. We're 5 short, so please consider joining this illustrious team. Committee chairs. These are the people who said, yes, I will take on the leadership of a committee and make it happen. Kevin Jones, Morgan Brown, David Vogel, Art Chippendale, Terry Sullivan, Jake Jacobovitch, Justin Hirsch, and Jim Garrison were all committee chairs this last year. Other key volunteers, Debbie Jackson has been very, very helpful in maintaining our mailing list and our membership list and doing social media. Jenna Rigg has made beautiful posters for us this last year. And there must be at least 100 members of the community who are members of the various committees and have tabled and helped in many different ways to keep this organization going. And I just wanted to make sure that key people got mentioned because it's a lot of work and it's worth it. I do believe that our community needs a community council, and I think those of us who are showing up at these meetings see the value of it. So I want to mention that. Okay, now, are there any community announcements that people would like to raise? Anything that they'd like to mention?
I'll just mention that Armin Yusufian here. The Affordable Housing Committee has its next meeting on January 25th, I believe, and somehow somebody should get themselves on the email list if they want to attend that.
If you go to our website, you'll find a way to reach the Affordable Housing Committee.
I would just like to share my frustration with the December 21st Beachcomber. They've got a big advertisement here for, it looks like Sotheby's International Realty. And I believe this is brand new. My friend Dave Mish was telling me about this about a year ago. And he was real frustrated that we were getting a high-end real estate company coming here to Vashon, and here it is. And I don't like the looks to this kind of thing. This is what gentrifies our island, and this is what's driving our affordability issues. And I don't know if there's anything that can be done about this, but I just wanted to point this out, that, you know, we have institutions here on the island that are, I believe, very detrimental to what we want Vashon Island to be.
Yes, Jenny.
Have I got this correct that in order to examine an issue, it has to be proposed as a motion at this meeting and then examined at the next meeting?
Yes, the way it works, if a member wishes to make a motion, they'll propose a motion at one meeting, and then it's seconded, and there's some discussion that takes place if we have time, and then it's not voted on until the following meeting, to give the community time to think about the motion and weigh in and come to the meeting if they want to vote on it.
Great. I'd like to propose a motion that the VMCC take on investigating the PSE issues and consider representing islanders through this body with regard to, in particular, the bodies, the UC and the Attorney General's Office in terms of business practices, to propose that this body take an active interest in examining and having full discussions about it as a community, rather similar to what you're doing with the town planning and incorporating that. So I think the PSE issue is very important. Quickly, there's a potential loss of 10 foot plus of trees in our street frontages connected with what we're going through, that you saw a little bit this evening, and it's a very big issue, and how it's actually being gone about is questionable.
I'd be happy to
So
second that
that's-
motion, Diane.
It's not really made as a motion yet, so I think we're just discussing it at this point. We
Yeah,
can't,
well-
that motion is way too long to be made into a motion.
Yeah, the
And,
motion is that VMCC, which is the membership, take on the issue of representing what the interests of our island is with regard to the PSE issue, because the problem that we're having here is working out whether it is an issue.
We need just the motion,
VMCC, I propose VMCC take on the issue of PSE, what they're calling tree wire project, which is actually clear cut of 10 foot of street frontage, and to investigate that issue and decide whether, too fast? To decide whether it's in the interest of islanders that VMCC represent what our views are.
I wrote down the motion is that the VMCC should take on the issue of PSE tree wire projects, which potentially amount to clear cutting of street frontage, and investigate that issue to decide whether it is in the interest of islanders. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that VMCC represent island interests specifically with regard to this matter.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think I got the language. Thanks.
Okay, and it was
seconded.
seconded by Kevin, right? You seconded it?
That's correct. Thanks, Diane.
Okay, and so I think we have time. We can open it up for a little bit of discussion before the meeting ends.
So when you say, just so I understand what this is going to ask, when you say take on the issue of the PSE tree wire project, do you have a sense of what you're envisioning this body would do?
So the problem I'm seeing here, and maybe it's a formatting thing, like the way the meetings are run, but we need to have a discussion as a community in order to establish whether we have a problem or not. And this body is meant to represent Islander interests. So it's such a big issue that we have to have some kind of if you guys want to actually represent island interests, we have to have a discussion about it and go into it much fuller than like what happened tonight, for example.
So is the idea that the idea is if the motion carries that we would have more discussions about PSE and just to decide how we feel about it? Or are you asking that this body like make any recommendations or take any action?
Well, I just like the town planning committee, right? You have a group of people that this VMCC is supporting the town plan committee to discuss something, come up with a consolidated point of view, and then present it on behalf of the VMCC as what represents island interests. So I'm asking for the same thing.
Right. I guess I would imagine that we would say, well, the difference there is with the town planning committee, it's through the county. There are a number of procedures in place that solicit feedback from citizens, and then the county, because they're a governmental agency, take those things into account. There is no procedure to opine on what PSE is doing and have them take any action because they're a private company.
Can someone else chime in on this?
Yeah.
I just want to say very quickly two things.
Yes,
One,
Armin, please speak.
this whole PSE thing, isn't that under the jurisdiction of Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission? So just keep that in mind. And then a very quick comment about Sotheby's. Sotheby's was started a year ago, that office, by two longtime islanders, Dick and Linda Bianchi. They've been on the island about 50 years. They were the former owners of Windermere. So it's not like some out-of-town company has come here. I just want to defend them a little bit. And others that had been with Windermere spun off and created a new office. Nothing new about that in the real estate business.
Thank you, Armin. So there is, in thinking this through, in a situation like this, where someone in the community wants to work on an issue, then a committee is formed. It doesn't have to be like the committee for the reviewing the town plan. That's different. But we have a number of different committees that are looking at things. They are advisory committees to the board. And so the committee will study the issue and then come to the board with a recommendation, and then what the community council can do, if the members agree, would be to send a strong message to PSE in the form of a resolution. And that's about all we can do.
Yeah, and to speak to the issue of like UTC and AGO, they are the watchdogs of the private corporation PSE. So it would be representations to both PSE and the watchdogs themselves to actually act on our behalf if that's what we decide as a group.
Yes, so a resolution would then go, would be made by our members.
Yes.
And then that resolution would be sent to those organizations.
Yes.
And that's how we could do it.
Yeah, so that we can represent what the islanders actually want with regard to this issue. So if you were willing to support
the creation of a committee?
Yes.
That's so the motion could be it could be modified to create a committee.
Certainly.
To an advisory committee to the board to look into this.
Yes.
And advise the board and on a resolution.
Yes.
That to me is how I see it could work. But that would be up to, and would you see that as a friendly amendment or redo of your
yes,
motion?
definitely. Uh-huh.
So maybe it could be, the motion could be that I move that the Vashon-Maury Community Council create an advisory committee to look into PSE
I think support, I don't know, are you guys, do you want to be able to choose the people who are investigating? Support. I would use the word support.
Who are on the committee?
Yeah, you said you used the word support. Sorry, create instead of support.
It's to create. We don't have a committee.
No, so I don't know how we
could
actually
move.
do it. I mean, I could
How do you
propose.
think Ben was adjusting. Ben was writing down the.
I just was writing down that the amendment was being, or the motion was being amended to that the VMCC should create an advisory committee to look into the issue of the PSE tree wire project.
Yeah, maybe.
I should also say, as long as I got the mic, for anyone interested, they're in making a complaint to the Attorney General's office and UTC. In the meantime, without the need for a committee, there is a link that is available to everyone.
Yeah, but
www.atg.wa.gov. That's the Attorney General's office, and then it's /consumer-help. It's in the link. It's in the chat. It is an open. I work for the Attorney General's office. It is a link that's available to anyone who wants to make a complaint about what they believe are bad practices by utilities.
Yeah, we actually have already pursued that course of action, and it's a black hole, unfortunately. UTC says it's not their job, it's outside their proviso, and AGO says talk to UTC.
Okay, Rick, what would you like to say about this? I'm sorry, Kevin, you were first, please.
Yes, thanks. I know, I'm sorry, I don't recall your name. I was making the motion.
Jenny
I know
Bell.
we've emailed before. Jenny, thank you. I'd be happy to work with you if you'd like. It'd be awesome. I know the board has got a lot to do, so a board member could also help guide sort of how that motion could go forward. But if you'd like somebody to converse with about how that motion could go forward, I'd be more than happy to work with you. I brought several motions forward, and I think I've got a pretty good understanding of kind of how the board would work with you. So if a board member would like to work with you, that would be cool. If not, I'd be more than happy to touch base with you. And I'm sure Diane or somebody there could probably get my contact info to you. Maybe how about I just say, give me a call, 463-1766, if you'd like to accept that offer. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks,
So
Diane.
the motion now, as it's been in red that we can put in and seconded, would you read it again for the record so we have it?
Sure. So the motion is that the VMCC should create an advisory committee to look into the PSE tree wire project and to decide whether it is in the interest of islanders.
I'd say look into it and take whatever action they feel is appropriate action, because we don't know what might happen. Is that okay? Okay. Yeah, and then when it comes up for the vote, it can be also modified at that time as well. But this is the gist of it.
I have a comment.
Yes.
This is Melvin Mackey.
Hi, Melvin.
At the beginning of that motion, I think you should take the word should out of it.
Yes. I move that. Yes.
Take that word out. It's that they do it.
Yeah, we got it, Melvin.
Okay, thanks.
And so we had, okay, we did have one of our board members was there. Rick was there, but he's gone, so maybe he just had to leave.
Oh, no, I'm
All
still
right,
here.
well, are you? Okay, sorry. Could you like to speak?
Yeah, my only comment was I didn't know if there was an existing committee that this could go to, but maybe it's just the fact that it needs a new one. I was just curious about that.
No, there is no existing committee that this would fall under.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, well then, I think we are done for the evening, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, very much. It's always interesting, these meetings. See you next time. Oh, and I want to mention, next meeting, Thursday, February 15th. We are going to have refreshments a half an hour before the meeting begins to encourage people to come in person to the Land Trust building. Okay, see you then. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. Bye-bye.